Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, the raw, unfiltered data of a human life put under a microscope. We're unpacking a quantified self-review. Specifically, we're looking at someone named Ang's Week 28 review, dated July 12, 2026. And honestly, what makes the source material so compelling isn't just the massive amount of data they tracked. It's really about watching how a highly disciplined life reacts when things, well, inevitably go wrong. It's all about building a system so resilient that it can withstand physical pain, bad weather, and just sheer exhaustion.
Okay, let's dive into this. To mirror the highly structured nature of a quantified self-tracking system, we've broken today's agenda into 6 parts: the foundation of wellness, managing sleep and physical setbacks, diet, fasting, and mindfulness, digital projects and productivity, hobbies, home, and growth, and finally, designing your own routine.
Starting off with Part 1, the foundation of wellness. Before we get into all that granular data, we kind of have to ask, why on earth track your habits to this degree in the first place? Well, Ang's core thesis is super clear. A proactive focus on health and wellness is absolutely crucial for a better life. It's not just a side project, right? It enhances your daily energy, brings mental clarity, and builds long-term resilience. It is the essential foundation you need to achieve literally any other personal or professional goal. You aren't just trying to avoid getting sick, you are actively engineering your daily energy. And as you'll see, every single metric we're about to look at stems right from this one foundational philosophy.
Moving on to Part 2, managing sleep and physical setbacks. Because, philosophy only takes you so far when reality actually hits. And Week 28 for Ang was a genuinely tough week. We see a pretty sudden, drastic drop in both sleep duration and quality. Back in Week 27, Ang was averaging a very solid, healthy 7.7 hours of sleep. But in Week 28, that plummeted to just 6.1 hours, and it came with 2 brutal days of highly fragmented rest. When you're tracking your life this closely, a sudden drop like that definitely sets off alarm bells.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that you don't just wake up tired and complain about it, you look at the data to find the root cause. And the culprit here is almost funny in its specificity. Pumpkin seeds. Yeah, you heard that right. Ang noted that stopping their intake of pumpkin seeds caused a sudden drop in magnesium. And magnesium is absolutely crucial for inducing muscle relaxation and regulating melatonin, which is the hormone that dictates our whole sleep-wake cycle. So remove the seeds, you remove the magnesium, and boom, fragmented sleep. Oh, and this was also compounded by back pains from muscle spasms and a relapsed knee injury. So basically a perfect storm of physical setbacks.
Yet, despite that perfect storm of pain and poor sleep, Ang maintained a daily average of 6,009 steps for the entire week. They kept this physical activity level up despite some unforeseen travel, the muscle spasms, and actively treating that relapsed knee injury with daily heat pad sessions. It just goes to show that in a structured routine, a setback isn't an excuse to go to zero, right? It's simply a reason to modify, treat the issue, and just maintain the baseline.
All right, Part 3, diet, fasting, and mindfulness.
So that physical discipline relies heavily on what we put into our bodies, the dietary frameworks and mental practices that keep the human machine running smoothly even under a ton of stress. Now, if you're new to quantified self-tracking, the jargon can seem a bit, intense. But let's demystify it a bit. Ang tracks what they call a 2-1-1 or 2-2-1 diet. This simply refers to a very specific, balanced ratio of plants to protein to carbohydrates. And they pair this with intermittent fasting routines like 16-8 or 5-2, basically eating only until about 70% full and making sure to get a steady intake of fish, like sardines. During this particularly tough week, Ang returned to just 2 meals a day, strictly followed that 2-1-1 ratio, and ate dinner earlier. And the result? Despite all the stress and the lack of sleep we just talked about, their weight actually dropped slightly from 69.96 kilograms to 69.89 kilograms. The nutritional system absolutely held strong.
And you know what? The system for the mind held strong too. Ang's mindfulness routine is wonderfully practical. We're not talking about sitting on a mountain for hours on end. We're talking about 1, 2, or maybe 3-minute sitting meditations. It's walking meditations, squeezed right into everyday errands, or even while doing yard work, like raking leaves and substrates. It's a practice of constant mental noting. Ang actually describes this simply as being stoic as usual. It's a micro-habit approach to mental resilience that, honestly, anyone can adopt.
Which brings us to Part 4, digital projects and productivity. So we have the physical and mental foundations totally secured. Let's look at how this kind of discipline translates directly into consistent output and technical learning. And keep in mind, this was a week with fragmented sleep, travel, and a bad knee injury. Yet the relentless consistency here is just staggering. Ang still churned out 3 written posts every single day. They were continuously looking for ways to optimize their writing workflow, literally building custom tools for code formatting and image processing. Even when they noted a lack of capacity for major coding contributions, they still followed through on updating complex back-end programming frameworks, specifically updating CI for Elixir 1.20 and Erlang OTP 29, all while continuing work on pet projects in Python and Haskell. The baseline of productivity in a system like this is just so much higher than average.
Moving to Part 5, Hobbies, Home, and Growth. Because a machine that only works eventually breaks, right? Enge explicitly states that hobbies are a crucial outlet for learning, personal growth, and adding a sense of purpose beyond just the daily routines. And this brilliantly illustrates how a highly disciplined person reacts to obstacles. Honestly, it wasn't a perfect week for hobbies. Gardening was completely halted by heavy rain and that relapsed knee injury. The fish-keeping tank setup for dwarf cichlids was delayed by urgent errands, so they just did some light cleaning. Photography was disrupted because a legacy mobile operating system forced an unexpected phone upgrade. Even around the home, it was just light decluttering instead of bigger projects. But notice how they framed their goals for the following week. There is no quitting, there's only proactive pivoting. Rain stops the garden? Fine, resume seed germination indoors. The phone upgrade changes the camera? Start researching an external mobile macro lens. Want to improve the home? Plan to install curtains and grout the balcony next week. The momentum never actually stops, it just redirects.
And finally, Part 6, Designing Your Own Routine.
So, what does this all mean for us? How do we take this exhausting level of detail from Eng's Week 28 review and actually turn it into actionable advice for our own lives? Well, first, track the microvariables. You literally can't fix a sleep problem if you have no idea it's tied to the magnesium in your pumpkin seeds. Data gives you leverage over your own biology. Second, when physical or environmental setbacks happen, and let's be real, they definitely will, adjust your targets, but do not abandon the routine. Using a heat pad and hitting 6,000 steps is way better than 0 steps. And finally, actively use your hobbies. Don't just treat them as downtime, but as intentional avenues for learning and expression outside of your daily grind. A structured approach isn't about being a robot. It's about building a fortress of resilience against life's unpredictable chaos.
So the crucial point I want to leave you with today is this. If you reviewed your past 7 days in this much detail, what would your numbers actually tell you? Would they reveal a rock-solid foundation of wellness, or something more like a house of cards? It's a challenging thought for sure, but honestly, it's the very first step toward taking true control of your daily reality. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to start tracking some of your own micro variables this week.